It's like, I'm sorry, man. This hurts me more than it hurts you. And it's like, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, thanks.
What's up, my nerd?
Welcome, everyone, to the Credible Nerds Podcast. My name is Justin, and I am here with my fellow co-host, Mark. How's it going?
Good. How about you guys? Good to be here.
Yeah, and this time we're going to be talking about a new series that just came out that was released about 2 weeks ago, related to the Dune movies. If you haven't heard of it, it's called Dune Prophecy, and it is a weekly series on HBO Max. And they just released season 2 this week, and we'll be seeing weekly releases every Sunday, I believe it is. So if you haven't heard of that yet, go check it out. Like I said, there's 2 episodes out, and it is based on the world of Dune that we just got Dune Part 2 earlier this year, and is one of the best movies I've ever seen. So definitely check out the movies if you haven't. They're not directly connected per se. It's in the same universe, and there's some loose connections. So if you watch the movies or watch the show prior to the others, like, you're not going to get spoiled. You'll just see the connective tissues. At least that's how I see things. But so far, I'm excited for this show. It's been good. What's your first and initial impressions on Dune Prophecy so far, Mark?
I kind of went into it a little bit of grain of salt, right? I mean, movies are good, and then you get these TV series that come out, and you just, you never know. I still have Wheel of Time issues, and so
PTSD.
yeah, PTSD from Wheel of Time. So I was a little bit interested. Came out, and I waited, a couple days to see it, and finally, I just, took a look at it, and it was surprisingly good. The first episode did not disappoint. Kind of brought in a lot of cool aspects to it. We get to see, Bene Gesserit, pre-Bene Gesserit, right? Kind of first forming. We get to see the Empire as it's starting to come together. What they call it, the Imperium, right? Is that what they call it? So we get to see that. So it was really good. I enjoyed it. The second episode kept it going. Wasn't as I don't think it was as good as the first episode, right? Because we're starting to get more story building, and that slows it down. But overall, I've really enjoyed it so far.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I want to point out that it's set 10,000 years prior to the movies in Dune, the events in Dune. So, like I said, there's some connective tissue, but we got a lot of story to go through before we get to the Dune series. And for me, we had watched Dune Part 2 in theaters when it first came out. I remember that. And I think I told you, I was like, I think this is one of the best movies I've ever seen. And so it was, I was blown away just how good it was. And then I rewatched Dune Part 2 probably a week before I saw the first episode, because I wanted to get back into the flow and stuff. And I was a little let down with episode 1. And it took me a minute to figure out why. And it was because Dune Part 2 was so good. And so and I was like, then I watched the second episode, and I was like, okay, yeah. Okay. It's a TV show. So it's got that, the lower budget. The actors aren't, as top tier. So I was able to kind of reframe things and be, okay, yeah, I like this. Kind of had to, come down and just remember it's a TV show when they have a lower budget and all that stuff. So I agree. It is a good show. It's good so far. Good first 2 episodes where, they're building the story. They're setting the new tone for this new story that we got going here 10,000 years prior to the events of Dune. So, and just a quick overview before we get started. It's set 10,000 years before the events of Dune. The series follows sisters Valia and Tula Harkonnen as they combat forces that threaten the future of humanity and establish the fabled sect known as the Bene Gesserit. The series focuses on the origins of the Bene Gesserit, a powerful social, religious, and political force whose members possess superhuman powers and abilities after undergoing years of intense physical and mental conditioning. It takes place before the events of the film. The show, which draws upon but is still set after the books, the Great Schools of Dune trilogy, by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. So that was interesting. I read this is from Wikipedia, so just a generic overview. But it says that they have superhuman powers and abilities. And really, we've only seen one so far. Do you expect further things to be revealed as we go through the show, or what's your take on that, Mark?
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll see. I mean, we saw the voice. I think Bene Gesserit are just starting to come into their powers, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, we see her use the voice, and it was the first time anyone had seen that, right? Nobody had, it looked like, had experienced something like that before.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty neat. I did like that. I think we'll start to see what makes the Bene Gesserit so such a political force, right? I mean, we kind of know, right? They're known as truth seekers or truthsayers, or whatever the exact terminology they use,
Yeah.
and so that makes it a great political thing because then they can have them as um, these advisors who um, you know during negotiations or whatever, they can say, oh yeah, I mean, they don't know exactly what they're lying about or exactly what they're hiding, but they can say, hey, like, this guy is telling the truth from how he believes it, but he's
Mm-hmm.
hiding something,
Yeah.
right? Oh, this guy is completely telling you hogwash, right? Whatever it is. And so that's pretty cool. I kind of like, as I'm watching the series, it kind of blows my mind how everybody, I guess, let me rephrase that. What has the Bene Gesserit done to make everyone trust them fully?
Yeah.
Because it would seem to me like, if I'm, some political leader, how do I know these Bene Gesserit don't have their own agenda? Which they do, right?
Yeah.
We see that they have their own agenda, but everyone trusts them because they're these truthsayers. But they're truthsayers because I believe that they can know that. But they had to have done something. There's something that we haven't been introduced to that led to this belief in them, for them to have such high positions throughout the world, you galaxy or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and the Imperium, and everyone trusts them, and now they hold this sacred rank that nobody dares touch,
Yeah.
all the way to Paul Atreides, and we see that the fragileness of it. I don't know how we see how fragile that is in these first two, especially in the second episode. But at some point, it becomes solidified. And when does that
Mm.
happen? What happens? And so that I'm
Yeah.
interested to see if we see anything with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. As you started talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, well, why do we trust these guys? I mean, because if you just saw the Dune movies, you'd be like, well, of course, but this is, 10,000 years prior. So what happened? Hopefully we get that backstory. And I guess that could be considered a supernatural power, right? Because they touch their fingers and you kind of get these visual cues from the people filming it that, hey, they're accessing or tapping into this area of their mind, perhaps, or a magical source, perhaps, of they're able to tell, see those things, tell those tells, and be able to realize, hey, this guy isn't telling the truth, or they are. So I guess that's another one of those supernatural things that they just know. And again, where do they get that from? I think we got a little bit of it from like the first 5 minutes of the first episode. It was very brief, with the founder having a vision and things like that's playing into the rest of the story. So maybe visions are a part of this supernatural power as well. So interesting stuff. I'm curious to see where it goes.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be cool. Another thing that kind of caught me too, just their hand move, like their hand talk,
Mm-hmm.
and this kind of brought up, I'm thinking Wheel of Time, maiden hand talk, right? They
Yeah.
talk to each
Yeah.
other through weird, stuff, but like how nobody is like, what did you say? Right. No, like it's not like anybody doesn't notice them wiggling their hands at each other. They're having a conversation on the side. I don't know. I just
Yeah.
like it just blows me away that nobody's ever brought these questions up. And it's cool, like, addition to the story, because you can see it's like secret society,
Yeah.
yada yada. But I just strange to
Yeah.
me.
I wonder if that comes into play at some point where someone, because it's basically sign language, right? How do they,
Mm-hmm.
if someone's able to figure that out and be able to read it as they're doing it and then counteract it in their negotiations or whatever, that'd be kind of cool. So,
Mm-hmm.
all right. So some of the threads that we talked about, that we noticed are just kind of from this show, Prophecy, to the movies. That we've talked a little bit about the Bene Gesserit. This is the founding moments of that sect. The Sisterhood is what they're calling it. And it's a lot of similarities, but then it's not as fleshed out maybe, or not as solid as it is in the movies, which is understandable. I mean, it's going to take some time to grow. And so as far as the Bene Gesserit, they were in the movies, they were kind of the outside of the law type, outside of the emperor and the rulers, the dukes. They were outside of that and guiding them to certain things. Like the whole premise of Dune started when the Bene Gesserit advised the emperor to, take out the Atreides family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and it seems like no one, if they notice it, they don't really care, or they don't feel like they can strike back against the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah, I feel like the Bene Gesserit has made themselves these, they're basically what is it, religious zealots, right? They're the ultimate religion,
Mm-hmm.
and they've somehow solidified themselves to be unquestionable.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, they came up. They said that the Atreides had to go, and there you go. For whatever reason, right? Which is crazy because then you have Leto Atreides, right? Is married to a Bene Gesserit, and so they're
Mm-hmm.
kind of betraying their own,
Yeah.
and throwing them to the wolves. And I get it. Like they said, well, don't kill the mom and Paul,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. Throw them out to the dunes, and they're like, "Oh, we did all you can for you." What do you mean you did all you can for us? Like we're just
Yeah.
supposed to hopefully survive, right?
Yeah.
With worms and
Yeah.
everything else. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think they're pretty. They're a real dangerous group, and I almost feel like everyone understands the true power behind everything, and so nobody really wants to cross them. They'll
Mm-hmm.
follow their advice. I don't think that's a universe. The Dune universe is one that does not follow the Bene Gesserit advice. I don't think anybody would ever succeed. I think that you get some people like the Baron, who does not have a Bene Gesserit
Mm-hmm.
advisor. I think he
Yeah.
keeps them far away because he understands they're dangerous, but he's not powerful enough to, naysay it either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully we'll see that takes steps in this series to become what we see. But that seems like it'd be a pretty quick turnaround, though. If we see at the end of like the last episode of this season that they ascend to that level, so maybe if there's like 3-4 seasons, we'll see that at the end. But I don't know if we'll see that in the first season. I just hope as the story goes along, however many seasons it is, we see it get closer and closer to that. So. And then some other threads are Dune, Arrakis, and the spice there, and how they're still fighting over it. Or I guess not still, because it hasn't, they're fighting over it. It's a main source of power because the spice, allows them to travel through hyperspace throughout the galaxy. And whoever controls Arrakis is in power, basically. So that's still started here, and it's still there in 10,000 years later in Dune. We see the sandworms and how they kind of have this mystical quality. In the movies, we see them extract the bile to do, for the Mother Superiors to ingest and become, even more powerful. We see it here in this show. So I don't know. Are you aware of any other, like, what's the deal with the sandworms? Are they just monsters they got to watch out for, or do they have some bigger story, a bigger place in the story that you're aware of, Mark?
I don't know. I mean, they look cool to ride,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean, I don't know like their significance other than they feed on, they will go and feed on the spice. So what
hmm
does that mean?
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, we're gonna have flying worms through space? I don't know. So,
yeah,
but apparently they hold some mystical value
hmm
on some level. You like, I mean, the Bene Gesserit recognize it. It was in her vision, in her dream, or last minutes of life kind of thing. Um,
hmm
and so they hold a significance, but I don't know. Like, I don't know how that correlates, right? Um,
yeah,
like, is Paul Atreides just a worm? I don't know. Jeez,
yeah,
weird.
yeah. So I think, and we see that in the second episode more, where Desmond Hart, he was, I don't know if he's eaten is the right word, but he was swallowed by a worm, and now he has
Hmm.
some supernatural powers as well. And so, how did he get that? Because the men can't ingest the bile of the worm, or else it'll kill them. And Paul was the first one to do that. But maybe that legend was created because of Desmond Hart. I don't know. Maybe it's something that we'll see as it goes along. But anyway, the sandworms are still a player in this part of the story. The voice, we saw that you talked about that, how the Mother Superior was able to use that. She was the first one. We see that in the movies. And then the agony, we've kind of touched on that a little bit. How in this second episode, one of the characters undergoes, the agony is what they call, where they commune. They're given some sort of liquid. It looks like the same liquid we saw in the movies with the blue juice from the sandworm, and she's able to have this vision and connect with her previous ancestors, and we saw that in the movies too. So then we got the houses vying for power: Harkonnens, Atreides, Corinne's. So it's kind of all those gameplay still going on. So those are the segments or the threads that we see going through these two stories thousands of years apart. Were there any others that you noticed or you'd want to touch on, Mark?
No, I mean that's pretty good. Like we're just kind of it's kind of interesting to see where it's going. We're only in the second episode,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean those are the solid ones, right? Those are the main
Mm-hmm.
things that we're running into.
Yeah. So with characters, we're introduced to a whole new cast of characters. We got the main emperor, Javico Corinne. What do you think of him and his wife, the Empress Natalia? Do they do it for you? I guess. Do they eat up the screen? Do they, are they the ones we got to watch out for?
The Empress is a wild card to me. I don't know, like she's there, but she's
Mm-hmm.
not. I mean, she's just this voice in the background, right?
Yeah.
But I think she carries a lot of weight. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Emperor Javico, his power is pretty much given to her, not necessarily by her, given to him by her, but without her, he doesn't carry power. So she's, this large power of her in her right, but we don't see that. So are we going to see it? Is that going to come out? Interested to see that. I think Mark Strong is a great casting choice for Javico. I like
Yeah.
him
Yeah.
in
I
pretty
like
much
him.
everything he plays in, right?
Yeah.
Um, so he kind of reminds me of. This is funny. I'm going to say this. Do you ever see the the show Vikings?
Seen, yeah,
I
some
say
of it.
that because Travis Fimmel is from Vikings, but in
Uh-huh.
it there's this emperor, and I don't remember his name, but he's like the grandson of Charlemagne, and he controls France, and he totally plays possum the whole time. Like you just think this is a weak king, like really stuttering, like just seems like always on his back foot. And then right at the end, when you think he's at his weakest, he pounces and he takes out all his opposition in one fell swoop, ruthlessly, very strategic, and controlled.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh my gosh, this okay, this guy's pretty freaking bad, and that's what I'm getting from Emperor Javico, right? He seems completely reactive to everything around him. He seems like he's on his back foot. He's trying to make the right choice, but he doesn't know what that is. So he's like wish-washy a little bit. And I feel like we're gonna see him like, oh, this is why this guy's in charge. He's crazy, right? So
Yeah.
I think we're gonna see that from him.
Yeah, I hope so. Because I have seen that he's not like the strongest guy. He has his moments, but he's listening to his wife, which is fine. But he's listening to the advisors. He's like, what should I do? So he seems a little indecisive at times, in the sense that when he's talking to these people, he's doing it in public, right? When you're in public, you're supposed to be like forceful, definitive, all that stuff. Then you talk to your people behind the scenes, right? Your wife, your advisors, all that stuff. And he's doing that in public, and so he seems a little weakish. But he steps up and has these strong moments. So I'm like, what kind of leader is he really? So yeah, I'm curious to see. I'm hoping we see some good character development with him and his character, which I'm sure we will. A lot of these shows, especially these prequels, are how people become better and become the ruthless people that we know later on in the story, right? So I'm sure there's gonna be some development there. Desmond Hart, we mentioned, he's a soldier he showed up from Arrakis, and he has this special ability in these first two episodes, he's able to burn people from the inside. He's able to have like some psychic power to create heat within other people's bodies and burn them alive, basically from the inside out. And we saw that in the first episode with like a 12-year-old boy or 15-year-old boy. It was it's like, oh, they're gonna do this, huh?
It's like, I'm sorry, man. This hurts me more than it hurts you. And it's like, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, thanks. And then he does the same thing to the Emperor's advisor. And then we see that he does it to someone in this second episode. They were going to create a pact and reunite their houses, or at least their forces, and then that didn't happen. So this ability seems to be given to him from one of the sandworms that he was swallowed by. And so in the final scene of this second episode, or at least one of the final scenes, we got him and the sister, or the Mother Superior, facing off. And he's able to repel her voice and withstand her suggestions. And I'm kind of wondering, is this kind of what we're going to see as far as who's going to win out of these two groups, the Sisterhood or this guy? Are there other guys, like males? Is it going to be like a Wheel of Time thing with the Ashaman and the Aes Sedai? Are they going to have these two groups, or is it just this one guy against, the Sisterhood? Do you have any thoughts on that, Mark?
I mean, I think we know who wins out.
Yeah,
right?
We know who wins. At least 10,000 years later, we know who wins.
Yeah. But we don't know their origins. Like, his origin, is this one-off? Is he kind of like like a prophet for Muad'Dib? We don't know. I mean, it doesn't really explain a lot, but it's pretty cool to see that, now the Bene Gesserit, who seemed like this faction with immense power, immense political ties, is now put into a position of fear, right? Of being overtaken. And, he says it, Desmond Hart says it, I now understand what your true fear is. It's not that, you don't have power or whatever he says, but it's that nobody hears you.
Yeah.
Like, basically you don't matter. And, it's spot on, right? I mean, Bene Gesserit feel like there's this importance around them to bring forth this prophecy, and that they need to be in the center of everything, and they have their own political motivations. And imagine if all that power was for naught, because no one cared, no one listened to them. Yeah. And so I thought that was great. I think that we got to see the Bene Gesserit in fear, which you don't see. They're so sure of themselves. And so that's pretty neat. He's resistant to the voice, which was amazing, right? I'm like, oh man, this guy's gonna kill himself. I thought that we might see him straining, but then he just puts it in his pocket. Like, look, you don't Nothing you do scares me.
Yeah.
And the pyrokinetic ability of burning people, that's freaky on its own. And
Yeah.
and I don't know, is this really an ability, or is just he did something at some point and now it looks like an ability?
Yeah. Yeah. Like he slipped something in their food earlier and it takes time to activate or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, anything like that. So
Hmm.
I don't know, but it'll be kind of cool to see what happens going forward. But I hope they don't slow play it, right? I
Hmm.
don't want to see um, in 4 episodes now we'll start to see more head to head things. I feel like this is a clash that can keep going
Hmm.
as Desmond Hart gains the trust of the Emperor. The Bene Gesserit's removed from the presence of the Emperor, and now what? Like, I just, if they slow play it, I feel like that's going to make the TV series a really slow series, which um, might push people out of interest.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Why not speed it up? Right. Get going.
Hmm.
There's only 8 episodes usually with these series. I don't know how many are in this one, but I'm assuming 8. And you got to have a good story. You got to keep it moving. There's no filler episodes. We've talked about
Hmm.
that in previous podcasts. Then we got Valia, who's Mother Superior, and Tula, who's the the helper, one of her assistants, right?
Hmm.
Okay. So they're Harkonnens. And that's interesting because obviously we got the connection tissues to the movie, but there's, are they going to be loyal to the Sisterhood, or are they going to be loyal to their houses, or is it going to kind of come and go, cross over as needed? So, and they haven't really given any indications other than they've acknowledged that they're Harkonnens. So I don't know what that means, or how prideful are they in their house, right? Do you have any thoughts or insight on that? That they're Harkonnens, and does it matter?
Yeah, so I think it matters because of where the Harkonnens are. Harkonnens are at the end of Dune. We see that they hold this very basically fighting for number two in command with the Atreides. Ultimately, they
Mm-hmm.
win. Um, so we don't really know what happened. All we hear is the very beginning. The Harkonnens kind of went into hiding and into shame because they ran away from the fight with the machines, the
Yeah.
AI machines, or whatever. And so we don't really know where they're at. And these two left so that they didn't have to be a part of that outcast, almost like hiding, and they joined this Bene Gesserit sect. Not called that yet, but to I don't know, gain prominence or separate
Mm-hmm.
themselves from that.
Yeah.
And
So maybe
and
another
so
way for the Harkonnens to gain power.
yeah, it could be, create their name, but something comes out. I mean, because it doesn't seem like, they. I don't really know the kind of society that the Imperium is, but it doesn't seem like it's a matriarchal society,
Mm-hmm.
except for the Bene Gesserit. It still seems like it's a patriarchy, kings, barons, lords, whatever it is, are running
Yeah.
the world. I never saw, any of the women running the world,
Right.
and so um, I feel like that they use their political influence to gain the Harkonnens some foothold back into society at some point.
Yeah.
Um, but I always find it interesting too, is because like the whole basis of the prophecy is that now they want to start breeding bloodlines to bring forth Paul Atreides,
Yeah.
right? And in the end, Atreides was a Harkonnen and an Atreides, right?
Yeah.
That's where your prophet came from these
Mm-hmm.
two families and who have been at each other's throats for 10,000 years.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. So we'll see. I think they will use the Sisterhood to bring the Harkonnens back into power. Um, but I think their loyalty ultimately is to the Sisterhood because I think they realize that there's more power for them individually there. So, but
Hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, and they always end right. Sisterhood first, right?
yeah, yeah, okay. And then final character we want to bring up is Lila, the acolyte, who is we find out in the second episode that she is the great great granddaughter of the founder Raquella, and she didn't know that till this episode, the second episode. So I think we don't know much about her. She's younger, other than that she's the bloodline of the founder and is powerful. So I think we'll see. I think she's a wild card. I think things, the Sisterhood will rise or fall with her. And her, I think eventually she'll become a major player in this story. So I'm curious. I'm looking forward to see how her storyline plays out. So
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
yeah, so those are the kind of the main characters that we've been introduced to so far as in this show. It's only two episodes in. Uh, well, um, we've talked a little bit about Arrakis and the spice and how they're still fighting over it and trying to control it, see which house. I mean, the opening episode, there was this negotiation between the Emperor Javico and this other guy. I can't remember his name. One of the other houses, and they were going to unite their houses so that they can gain control over that. And this is kind of the first two episodes are about that, how that fell apart. And one of the reasons it fell apart is the negotiations were that Javico's daughter, who's in her 20s, early 20s, I'm assuming, maybe 19, late teen, but I'm assuming like 22, 24. And they arranged a marriage for her with this other house. Mm-hmm. And the kid is the one that got burned up, and he was like 12, 15. So it was really weird. And the plan was, well, she's going to go to study with the sisters. And by the time she's done, he'll be an adult at that point, won't be such a young teenager. And then they can finalize their marriage at that point. Because I think they were just betrothed or promised to each other in these episodes, right?
Did they get married?
There was a ceremony, but I think it was just like a engagement type ceremony.
Yeah, I can't remember because I know he was too young, so it's not like she's like hinting like, "Oh yeah, I know what I'm doing. I don't have to make babies with him for a while, and I like this sword master and blah blah blah." And so, but yeah, I don't know. That's a good point. Was that just like a formal betrothal, or was it some? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. And we see that all the time in these fantasy stories, right? Whether they're both younger, and they're promised to each other to establish power between kingdoms, and then as time goes on, they later get married. And so I think that's pretty normal. It's a little weird that she's so much older now, but if it had played out, by the time they got married, he would be, in his 20s maybe, and she'd be a little bit older. So it's fine in the end. But it didn't go out that way. He ended up getting killed, and so then the arrangements is off, and these two houses end up at odds, and they kick the one guy out. So I think that's kind of the genesis of the dominoes are going to fall as a result of this dissolution of the two houses and their deal that they had. So
yeah, I was thinking about it. This is a softball from left field. I think we don't see the Rachizis anymore. I think the Rachizis are ultimately overthrown and replaced by the Harkonnens because they were going to supply the protection for Arrakis and be that. But I think we see the Harkonnens come back in and take the Rachizis out and replace them.
Yeah, that's a good theory there. I think that could definitely play out. Then you mentioned the Atreides Swordmaster, and the Atreides seem to be part of the rebellion, or is it just this character, the Swordmaster?
Yeah, it seems like the Swordmaster. I mean, we don't know anything more than that. We know that the Atreides were like one of the prominent helpers to defeat the thinking machines. We don't know really what happens to them. I assume they're alive and well, but then you have this Atreides Swordmaster here training the princess. But then we see him too, like he's taking scans of the throne room. He's working with people who are actively working against the crown, right? And have sold this spice that was stolen, et cetera, et cetera. So where does that play in? I don't know. Like, is this a rogue Atreides? Is this
Mm-hmm.
the ultimate goal of the Atreides? Like that seems a pretty bold move. I mean, I guess this early on, you
Mm-hmm.
know, in the Imperium, it's not that bold of a move, but um, it seems a really weak move when I look at the overall of it. You know, it's kind of like I use sword master. You just kill the daughter and walk in and kill the king. I don't know
Yeah.
like how hard that is,
Yeah. You're living
but
in the palace. You got
yeah,
access.
and you're trusted. Like I
Yeah.
mean, but I mean, there must be some bigger goal that we can't see and why. Like there's a bigger world to what we see, and we just haven't been brought in enough to understand. Otherwise, like that's a big loophole at the end. Like all this subterfuge and crazy story in the end, he could have just walked in and killed him.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious to see where he goes. He's at the end of the episode. He was in danger, and so I'm wondering how this rebellion is going to pan out. I guess. Why is there a rebellion already? I mean, they just won the war, and now there's already people. Is it over spice and the control over the spice, or I mean, they haven't
Um,
really gotten too much into that.
I'm
Maybe.
assuming because his dad got one of the 9 rings, and you know,
Yeah.
they like power. I think in the end, that's really what it is, right? People like power.
Yeah.
When you're put in these powerful positions, you want more power. You know, we don't really get to see a whole lot except in Dune, right? But we said the Baron was super power hungry. The Atreides, why we don't get to see that from Leto. In the end, they were super power hungry. They were a very powerful family, and
Hmm.
they were starting to outstrip um, even the Emperor in a lot of ways, and so that's why he was killed. So they're they want power. I think that's really what it comes down to: is they see a chance for power and they want it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure we'll see how that goes. That'll probably be one of the major plot lines of this show, I'm assuming. You mentioned the War of the Machines earlier. That was kind of in the opening minutes of the first episode. The War of the Machines ended in. It seems like, and it's not because machines necessarily, it's kind of AI type controlled machines. Like I was thinking kind of Terminator level type machines who could think for themselves and they were threatened and that type of thing, because they're still using machines now with obviously their ships and their technology. So
Yeah, it doesn't really kind of doesn't really go into like what it was, right? Like you
mhm.
got forbidden machines, and then like in the books, the Sisterhood of Dune is what kind of what this is based off, or not. It's another one. There's books called Sisterhood of Dune. They talk about the forbidden computers. I don't know
Mhm.
what that is. Like it doesn't really go into depth, but yeah, they're for some reason they're forbidden, so
Yeah,
they're free thinking, I guess.
yeah, okay. And isn't that part of Dune? Like one of the movies, it was some of that ideas in the movies as well. Like they're still not trusting, or am I thinking of a different franchise?
I don't know. You could be right. I'd have to rewatch it and kind of reread the
Hmm.
books. It's been
Yeah,
ages since I've read the books.
yeah. All right, so that's just a introduction and how they distrust machines. So we'll see if that continues or not. So, any other thoughts on these first two episodes? Again, beginnings of the series, beginnings of the season. Not sure how many seasons they'll have. Hopefully, two or three, right? If not
Hmm.
more. I think there's a lot of potential here, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Any other thoughts?
I think I want to see in this film to go. I think I want to see the introduction or the creation of the Sardaukar.
Okay, and they are.
If you remember them, in the Dune series, we see the Sardaukar are hired, well, given to the Harkonnens
Oh yeah,
by
the
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 Emperor.
elites, elite fighting machine
Yeah,
warriors.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
okay.
elite fighting warriors. I think it'd be cool to see their introduction early on, as kind of, you know, right now the emperor is depending on the Rachizis, is that their name, Rachizis,
Hmm.
to help bring ships and men to protect Arrakis. but at some point he has to have his own men and his own ships, and this elite fighting force that everyone's like, oh well, we can't really oppose him too much because the Sardaukar will come kill us all.
Yeah.
So I think that I would like to see their introduction into the Dune series early on to kind of flesh out that base of power that the Emperor has.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I agree with that. Be nice to see something like, even if it's like the kind of how we're seeing the Sisterhood as the genesis of the Bene Gesserit, maybe a genesis of those guys, if not those guys specifically. Yeah. I like that. Cool. I want to see them go to Dune. I want to see some battles between the houses or between someone. Because I don't think there's like necessarily an alien threat coming in. It's mostly kind of like Game of Thrones type thing where the houses are always fighting for power. And so I want to see a lot of that. It's not just them negotiating and negotiations following through. And so like a lot of personal stuff, which I think we need to have those personal conflicts, but I want to see bigger scale battles, all that type of stuff as well. So, and I don't know how much they can do with the TV budget, but I'd still like to see something.
Yeah, I agree. That would be awesome.
Yeah. All right. So like we said, there's only been 2 episodes, so we're just getting into it. Hopefully at least 6 more episodes left, and we'll keep coming back to it and giving our thoughts on it and how we're liking it. So overall, I'd probably give these first 2 episodes an 8, 7.75, kind of in that range. Not necessarily above an 8, but not necessarily 7.5 either. 7.5 would be the lowest. It's kind of where I'm at. What do you think, Mark, as far as a grade on a scale of 1 to 10 or something like that?
For the first episode, I got to give it a little higher because I thought that was a great introduction to the series. But, brought a lot of good things. So I give it like a 9 as an introduction to the series. When I factor in the second episode and what we've seen all together, somewhere between a 7 and 8. 7.5 at most. 7, on a bad day. So somewhere right in there, right? Okay. I think there's a lot of potential to create the series to go to elevate 9, solid 9, 9.5. Yeah. I also see a lot of pitfalls here that can make this a 1-season wonder, Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Hopefully it's more than that. All right. So we'll get into a top 5 list. So I've been thinking not a lot about, but I've been thinking about prequels since this is a prequel to the movies Dune that were recently released. And so I went with the top 5 prequels to a series, a movie, whether it's movies or TV shows. So, and Mark, if you want to have your own list or comment on mine, feel free to do so. That's what this is about, right? Differing opinions. So mine, I think we both agree with this one, based on what we were talking about earlier, but the Alien prequels with Prometheus and Covenant. The Covenant left us on a kind of a cliffhanger, so I want to see a third one. I think there's talk of new Alien movies coming out. So as of a month ago, there were some statements made by Ridley Scott as he was doing Gladiator 2 promo interviews, and Alien came up, and he mentioned there's going to be some more. So we'll see whether it's another prequel or if they're going to build off Romulus, which was a great movie. But I'd love to see at least one more to wrap up that, create a trilogy out of those prequels. Number 4 is House of the Dragon from Game of Thrones. A lot of stuff there, a lot of things to unpack there with those different, again, it's kind of a battle of the houses, and then the ultimate power grab is the dragons, who has control of the dragons and that sort of thing. So it's going, we're in season 2. Has that wrapped up already? I think it has.
Yep. So season 2 wrapped up, and it was a letdown of a season. I mean, overall, when you go from season 1 to season 2, I don't think you've watched it, right? But when you go from season 1 to season 2, you're expecting like kind of an all-out war, really. It kind of built up to war, but we didn't get to see it. We got to see the beginnings of war and kind of the start of it. and so the next season is supposed to be a lot better. I can't even say it was really a whole lot of story building in season 2. It just didn't have what it needed, you know.
Mm,
Like, I don't know what it is, but it didn't have it.
okay.
So that's what it
All
was.
right. Well, admittedly, I was going off of season 1, which I have seen, but I did not see season 2 yet. So I was assuming it was just as good, but maybe that's not
Yeah, no.
before. Maybe that's an honorable mention.
No, it is a good one. There's a lot of potential there. I think it's a good number 4. I just think that as overall season 2 is a pretty weak season.
Okay. All right. Number 3, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. That trilogy. It sounds like that's over with, though. Hopefully they can revive it without Johnny Depp, because I thought it was good. I liked the first one. It was kind of a good intro, and second one was better. Third one was good with Mickelson. And I want to... There's supposed to be, I think, 6 or 7 movies of it, but it kind of fell flat. But I enjoyed it a lot. I think it was more mature, more adult than what we were getting with Harry Potter. And since I'm not 12, I would rather watch Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff there.
Number 2 of the top 5 prequels series, Rings of Power. We just did a Rings of Power season 2 review, so definitely check that out to hear why we like it and why we think it's a good series. I think it has its ups and downs, but overall, I like it. It's a good series with a lot of potential, and season 3 is greenlit in production, so we'll definitely get that. I think they're shooting for 5, maybe 6 seasons overall. Number 1 for me is the Star Wars prequels. Kind of started it all, kind of the prequel hype, so you got to give it that, at least that. But for me, I grew up on the original trilogy of Star Wars as a 5-year-old, basically, till 12. And then when Star Wars came back, it reinvigorated my fandom, got excited about it, enjoyed the prequels overall. They're some of my favorite movies. So for me, that's number 1 on top 5 prequels. For you, Mark, what do you think? Do you have a similar list, different list?
Yes and no. So I think as far as bringing a new generation into a series, I think that you're right. Star Wars is great, right? I mean, you had early, late 70s into early 80s movies that were great. And I mean, that defined films of its time. And then a long time went by. And then we had the prequels come out. And that really invigorated a new group of fans. And I think what that did for it, to bring new fans and keep old fans and keep, what it started and build on it. And, with today's technology, unparalleled. I don't think you can beat Star Wars for what it did. I think that for me, and I'm not saying this is going to replace Star Wars. I don't know how you throw in a number 6. Maybe you have to move one off, or we just say 5.1. But for me, as a solid reboot for a prequel, I have to bring X-Men in. X-Men First Class series, right? With Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, Kevin Bacon was in there, Jennifer Lawrence is in there. I mean, it was a great cast, great show. And I think it did a lot, right? We got to see Professor Xavier as a young Xavier. And I'm an old X-Men fan, right? I grew up watching the cartoons every morning, right? Like every other kid. And, I tried to, make my parents not make me go to bed with my mind. I'm not a mutant, so it didn't work. Yeah. But I think that one deserves to be somewhere in this group. I don't know where.
Top 3. I would say it's top 3.
Yeah, it was definitely good. I mean, I think the 2 solid reboots won, and I think the last 2 were a little weak, right? The last 1 or 2 were a little weak, but I mean, they were great series overall. We got to see a lot of fun things with those.
Yeah. Yeah, I might even push it to number 2, maybe 3.
Yeah.
I don't think it's below 5, that's for sure. I hadn't thought of it till you brought it up. So that's good. Yeah, I enjoyed especially the first one, just how they were able to do the backstory or do the kind of the reboot with the different timeline and things like that. So, and the characters the actors were great in revising those characters as younger versions. So Yeah, it was great all the way around. And of course, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine showing up was great. So,
Yes. Yeah.
so
He's forever going to be Wolverine now, right? He's been
yeah,
Wolverine in the past, present, and the future, right? I
yeah,
mean, hopping worlds and
yeah,
timelines. So
yeah. We'll see where he goes, or if they'll bring in Henry Cavill, or if that was just a cameo. But we'll
that
see.
was awesome, actually.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's my top five. Obviously, can add and subtract some to that, but that's where I'm at today. So, Mark, you got a hot take for us to wrap it up?
Let's see, my hot take. I'd say up to say, with this new series, um, I think that we're gonna see um, Atreides and Harkonnen start going at it. I think Harkonnens will gain power. I really do think they're going to replace the Cheesies, but I think we're going to start to see the Atreides start coming into their own. I don't think that they're this great thing that Leto Atreides is painted for us and Paul Atreides is painted for us. I think they're pretty cutthroat to have that much power in a
Yeah,
universe with the Imperium in it.
yeah,
And so I think we're going to see in this one pretty clear what's going on. And I think we're going to see the Bene Gesserit make some very aggressive moves to retain power over Desmond Hart. Yeah, for sure. I think that there's a lot of potential here. Uh, Looking forward, I think we're going to get an A plus of a series, and I say that very lightly because I'm scared I could be wrong, but I
the
think we'll get an
potential's
A
there.
plus series. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think so. I think you're gonna get the usual. This series sucks. Blah blah blah. This isn't Dune. You're gonna get up the usual stuff that we get with these type of series, and then as time goes on, kind of like with the Rings of Power, right? Everybody hated it at first. Oh, there's an orc family. Oh, there's Elrond and Galadriel are kissing. And then as the show goes on and it's fully released and it's done, you're like, oh, this is a good show. Those little stupid things that people are complaining about don't even matter. They were moments in the film, and when you put them in the context, it's great. It fits, it works. So I think we'll get that, but I think at the end of the day, after the 8 episodes are done, I'm hoping, like you are, that we get this. It's a great send off for the series as a whole, and this first season set the tone. So I hope we get that.
Yeah. Yep. I'm excited for the whole thing. I'm excited for the third movie to come out in
Yeah,
26,
yeah, who
something
knows?
like that.
Yeah,
But it'll be fun. I think it's a fun and great series. I
mm-hmm.
remember watching it. Geez, the old school, one back from the '80s or something
Yeah,
like that,
yeah,
and I loved it then. So
yeah. I think it has a lot of potential. Would you like to see them do? So let's say this is like a 2 or 3 season or whatever it ends up being series. Would you want to see another? So this is 10,000 years before prior. Do you want to see like 100 years prior to Dune, or 5,000 years? Would you want to see them play with that timeline and introduce some key stories from that timeline?
yeah, I think it'd be fun to get a little bit like Wax and Wayne type, right? Where
Mm.
we have season one, and then season two will be another 1,000 years or
Oh, so
1,500
with this
years,
show
whatever.
in and of itself, you're saying like next
Yeah,
season of this show is 1,000 years later.
yeah, something like that, and then we
Hmm.
we further, we get to see some more intrigue, whatever it is. Bene
Hmm.
Gesserit become the Bene Gesserit. Then the third season, we time warp more, and so we
Hmm.
can kind of see the Dune, um, the Imperium as it progresses, the Atreides as they progress to their power, etc., and then lead up, and maybe season four kind of uh, end at Leto as a child, getting
Hmm.
prepped or whatever, meeting
Yeah.
Jessica, whatever it is. Who knows, right? But I think it'd be kind of cool because then you'd get this nice view of the entire world of Dune, the entire universe of Dune, and you're not stuck in this 10,000 years prior. It's like, well, great, that's 10,000 years ago. I know where this is going because we have the end result, but I
Yeah.
don't know everything in between. So show me cool stuff in between.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. And I actually like that idea better. Because I was envisioning, okay, this series, 3-4 seasons is 10,000 years. The whole series is 10,000 years prior. Okay, but it's it's its own thing. So I would want to see another series and then another series, and as it gets closer. But I like your idea of like, hey, let's touch on these touch points throughout this 10,000 years, and then the last season is leading up right, to the movies. I like that idea a lot better. So it's a good one. Because I think you can do a lot with that. I think you can show the genesis as well as the evolution of this Bene Gesserit, which is such a powerful organization in this modern day version of Dune, the modern day Dune, I guess you could say. So, yeah, hopefully we get that. Cool. Well, we want to thank you guys for watching, for listening to our podcast, and for being a part of this. We appreciate the time that you spent. Definitely comment on the video. If you are a Dune aficionado and you know a lot more than we do, which isn't too hard, definitely comment on this video and let us know what you think, where the show is going, how the first 2 episodes have been of this first season, kind of what you're thinking about it, and we'll engage in conversation that way. But like the video, comment on the video, share the video, helps us out. Check it out on your favorite podcast listener as well. And we'll keep putting out more Dune content as the show goes along, and we'll keep talking about it. We like it. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
See you guys.